Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, February 1st, 2017. Can I have the roll call, please?
Dan Carey.
Present.
Peg Conniff. Salem Derby.
Present.
Jennifer Hayes. J.P. Kwasinski.
Here.
Joseph McCoy.
Here.
Daniel Rist.
Here.
Tamara Smith.
Here.
Joy Winnie. Here.
Could please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I please have a motion for the approval of the minutes of January 18th?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second approval of the minutes of January 18th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? No? Okay. Motion passes. Public speak time. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to address the City Council from anything that's just not in our public hearing section? Please come up and just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, just give me a second. I just have my notes.
Sure.
Hi, my name's Matt Scourin. I'm from 17 Campbell Drive in Easthampton. I am here tonight to discover if, and when we last met on the 18th, that there was a meeting scheduled for February 8th. A continuance of the discussion on the sanctuary city issue. And I'm here to discover if the canceling of that subcommittee meeting without notice on the town website that I can find, and with the signing of executive orders tying the issue of sanctuary specifically to federal funds, Section 2, Line C of the executive order, means that the issue has been shelved indefinitely.
No, Councilor Derby, do you want to respond to that? I mean, it's just been rescheduled.
We rescheduled that meeting, I think it was within a week of scheduling it because one of the counselors had a conflict and couldn't make it.
Okay, did we post that on the town website?
I don't know if it's, I'm not responsible
Because
for
it's, okay, because in the news and update section, we're still talking about the summer watering restrictions and things that are happening this week, but nothing concerning that issue. And it seems like the lack of people here, perhaps not enough was done to communicate that.
We're not taking that issue up tonight either.
Right, so it's not, but do you have the date?
21st, I thought it was.
It's 21st.
February 21st.
Okay, great, excellent, thank you so much.
No, 22nd, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
22nd at 6?
22nd, Wednesday, 22nd at 6.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
And we'll do our best to make sure the website is updated. Thank you for your information on that. Anyone else from Public Speak who would like to address the council from something other than what's on the Public Speak agenda? No. So we can move on to communications from elected boards, committees. Councilor Derby, anything?
We do have a request from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, it says for that.
Okay, and this is a request from Parks and Rec to name one of the baseball fields in Section 3 of Nantucket Park. It's to request the City Council to convene a 5-member panel for naming the last baseball field diamond or ball field diamond at Nantucket Park located at Section number 3.
Okay. So if I believe I always forget that if it's three council president, 2 the mayor, 3 the mayor, 2 me, but we put together in the charter a naming committee, so we'll put together usually representatives from Parks and Recs and other, and certainly if there's any interested individual who would like to be participating in that committee, please either let myself or the mayor know. Okay, anything else, Council?
That is it.
Okay, and again, as I've said before, anyone from any councilors have any information they would like to let the councilor win?
Oh, thank you. I received a letter today, anonymous, in the mail, and so I just want to put this out there that when I receive anonymous letters and I can't respond to them, I seriously don't take them seriously. I understand that people don't want to put their names down or whatever for whatever reason. However, I don't feel that I should put a lot of credence into anonymous things that are sent to me in the mail. So this is just, I'm putting it out there for the public that if you want to send me or any of my fellow counselors a letter, we do keep it confidential if it's just sent just to me or us individually. But please sign your name and put your contact information so that I can be in kind and respond to whatever issue it is that you would like to talk to me about.
Although I think, and Councilor Rish, you could check, I believe if there's a communication to you as a public official, it becomes public record, so I'm not so sure it's confidential. Is that correct?
That's correct, as soon as it goes to the city council.
Okay.
So in process, you should submit that letter to the clerk for archival purposes.
I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Any other questions or notifications? Okay, we can move on. Mayor Communications, Mayor Cadger? Nothing, okay. Standing Committees, Finance, Council Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was absent at the last Finance Committee meeting, and they were able to deal with 2 items, which I now would like to move to put on public hearing agenda for the next meeting, which I believe is the 15th. That would be $23,000 for the replacement of a dump body for a sewer department dump truck and $150,000 for replacement of a water main crossing on Ferry Street. I'd like to move for a public hearing in these chambers at 6:15 on the 15th of this month.
Second.
Motion and a second to set 2 public hearings for the previously read supplemental appropriations, February 15th in these chambers. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain, opposed, motion passes.
Also, because the only item on our agenda is the city council budget, we are canceling the finance meeting for the 8th, that's next week, and we are going to hold a meeting at 5:30 in these chambers on the 15th of the finance committee to quickly deal with the remaining aspects of the city council's budget request. And we should be able to present it that evening to the full council. So that meeting is now, I would like posted for 5:30 on the 15th in these chambers. Finance Committee meeting. And Mr. President, I believe that concludes.
Okay, thank you. Public Safety, Councilor Carey. Blank on your name.
We have the Pleasant Street on for public hearing later today, and we're still discussing the mobility poll, and we'll be doing that at the next meeting next Tuesday, February 7th at 6 p.m.
Okay, that concludes. Okay, appointments, Councilor Smith.
Thank you. The Appointments Subcommittee met earlier tonight at 5:30 in the conference room downstairs to consider 4 mayoral appointments. The first one was for Alita Kennedy for the board or committee of the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership with term expiration of December 31st, 2019. Alita Kennedy previously served on the Commission on Disability, and this will be a lateral move over to working on the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership instead. So I wanted to open it up for discussion.
Entertain a motion then?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to move Alita Kennedy to the full council for consideration for the position of sitting on the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership with term expiration of 12/31/19.
Second.
Okay, a motion is second to approve the appointment of Alita Kennedy to the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes.
The second candidate for consideration is Patricia A. Bonner, DMD, for the Board of Health with a term expiration of December 31st, 2019. Patricia Bonner is a dentist who is practicing in Easthampton and is willing to sit on the Board of Health.
Okay. She was, actually, she practices in Northampton but lives in East
Sorry.
Hampton.
Mhm.
Any question? Okay, we'll entertain a motion then.
Did you have a question, Dan?
No,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
thanks, though.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to move Patricia Bonner to the full committee, the full council for consideration for sitting on the Board of Health with a term expiration of December 31st, 2019.
Second.
Okay, a motion is second to accept Patricia A. Bonner to the Board of Health. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes.
The next candidate for consideration is Lisa Jaffe for the Commission on Disability. Lisa came downstairs in our meeting earlier and spoke to us about her desire to sit on some civic engagement boards. She's a social worker who works in the mental health field and feels that that would be a good complement to the current board and Commission on Disability with a position on mental health as her focus. And I just would also like to note that Lisa Jaffe had written in her application that she would be amenable to sitting on several different positions and named a few that she thought would speak to her expertise and was willing to sit on more than one or simultaneously or wherever the best fit was. So I just wanted to bring that forth as well. And also she came to the interview, which is always promising.
Yeah.
So, is there any further discussion?
No? Okay. Entertain a motion then?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to move Lisa Jaffe to the full council for the position of Commission on Disability with a term expiration of December 31st, 2019.
Second.
Okay, motion second for the appointment of Lisa M. Jaffe to Commission Disability. Additional questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Motion passes.
And the last name for consideration tonight is Christopher Cockshaw for the Planning Board. Christopher used to sit on the commission, help me out here, Conservation Commission. And this would be another move from that committee to this one. And since the Planning Board often deals with zoning and new construction within the city, we thought this would be a good fit with the experience about some of the unique characteristics of the geography of Easthampton and the wetlands and those concerns within the city. So is there any further discussion for Christopher Cockshaw's nomination?
It's not?
Okay. Seeing no discussion, I'll make a motion to move Christopher Cockshaw to the full council for a position on the planning board with a term expiration of December 31st, 2019.
Second.
A motion a second to accept Christopher Cockshaw, the planning board. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Motion passes.
And we have no new business in appointments, so we have no new meeting set, and thus concludes.
Okay. Thank you. Ordinance, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. The ordinance subcommittee did meet last Wednesday, the 25th, where we had lengthy discussion on many of the items in our lengthy docket. So we looked at the food truck ordinance and heard some input from the fire chief specifically about propane tanks. He gave us some good information to consider. We did talk about the request to create human rights committee, and so we got some more information on that. And we also had guests from Hamden Care.
Yep, Hampton.
Hamden Care, and they were interested in talking to us about the recreational marijuana ordinance we were considering, and they also had some requests about potentially modifying their hours. So I think at the next meeting I'll be bringing forward a request to make some changes to the medical marijuana ordinance. But I did not have that prepared for this evening, and there's no rush. So,
Okay.
and I do want to state that we will be meeting on the 22nd, which is Wednesday at 6 p.m. here, where we will be reviewing all of the things that are on our lengthy agenda, including the consideration of sanctuary city designation.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes?
That concludes.
Okay, property, Council Kwasinski, you want to take care of that new business?
Yes, we have a request from Councilor McCoy to consider the possibility of a long-term lease agreement between the city of Easthampton and Easthampton City Arts for the Old Town Hall building. That would require a special act of the legislature, because I believe it's a 40-year lease that's been requested, which is a bit unusual. So we'll be looking at that. I'd like to move the matter to the property committee, but if we approve this, it will allow for tax credits, I understand, so it'll be
Okay.
interesting to hear the proposal.
Yeah, I've heard it in the
And
ballpark.
enable some additional work to be done
Right.
on the building, so there are certainly trade-offs that are worth considering here.
Right, the head of City Space Ed Chuck talked to me, it is in the ballpark of $800,000 to $900,000 potential income for City Space. Oh, and again, that's the big, I made an error that I put ECA plus, it is City Space is the city organization.
Okay, not
So that
ECA.
needs to be corrected, I apologize for that.
City space, okay.
Right, but and I think I forwarded Councilor Kwasinski a link from our Representative John Sybeck to learn more information about those credits and how to obtain them. So anyway, did you make a motion? I can't remember.
I would like to move it to property. Yes.
Second.
A motion and a second to move to property the request for the long-term lease for city space relating the old town hall building. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Entertain a motion, open public hearing.
So moved.
Motion and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Councilor Rist.
Thank you. The Finance Committee met a couple weeks ago to approve both of the items that are on the agenda this evening. The first one being a borrowing and bonding authorization. I'm going to ask that the Director of Public Works come up and explain this. This is an extensive project, part of the regular Transportation Improvement Program or TIPS program. It has a great deal, there's a great deal of payback. It's a bonding and borrowing authorization that eventually will target over $3 million in federal funds. And I would like him to explain to all of you all that it's going to do for this project. It's really exciting. Joe.
Good evening. This is for design improvements for Union Street, starting at this intersection here with this intersection and going up to High Street. It's called Complete Streets Improvements, which will cover vehicles, pedestrians, bicycles. So we're looking at not only new pavement, we're looking at new sidewalks, we're looking at new crosswalks. We're looking at doing something with the intersection of Railroad, Liberty, the bike path. That's a high crash area. That's been identified as a high crash area. We're looking to do something there. This is something that we need to do the design, and we need to continue to lobby the Transportation Improvement Program to keep this thing moving. This is scored on many different levels as far as it's ranked on improvements as far as bicycles, pedestrians, and vehicles and so forth. And we rank high in almost every one of those categories. The people at MassDOT, Department of Transportation, and the Pioneer Valley Planning Association and the TIP, they're very excited about this because it's something that is, it's right up there at the top. But you got to think of this as a race. It's like we can't let our foot off the gas. We've got to keep going. We've got to lobby for it. We've got to go to these meetings that are monthly, and our engineer and our planner do that. They go to this meeting. They show what we have done for updates, so we remain at the top of the list. If we lag, we can't show improvement at these lists, somebody else is going to pass us. Somebody else is going to fill that slot. So as soon as these funds are approved, we have a contract waiting to be signed with engineering firm VHB, who does this all type of work all the time. They will start with the design, and we'll keep moving forward. It'll probably take a year for this design to happen. And once it happens, then like I said, the funds, we could either be on the FY18 or FY19 list, depending on how soon we can get this done. But we're looking at some major significant improvements here. I've been here 32 years, and I'm pretty sure we repaved Union Street once, maybe 25 years ago. I can't remember the date. But this is way more than repaving. This is something that is going to be a big deal. It's actually going to connect the center of town with Cottage Street. It's going to make that all one. So it's very exciting. And like Councilor Riss said, we do the design, and once the design is in place, for $450,000, we'll be able to leverage out several millions of dollars in construction costs.
So the council knows this is short-term borrowing, and we only borrow as needed. We borrow first to get the design completed. We can't apply for the full federal funding until the design is completed, and we only borrow what we need. one of the things that was emphasized, as I think Joe alluded to, is this is very competitive. They have been working tirelessly to get us up to the point where now a design is appropriate because now we can apply for these funds. We've been on a lower list. And if we delay it, or for some other reason, the politics in this and the competitiveness, we would lose the federal funding. So we don't want to delay for any reason, because this project is so massive that a lot of people feel, and I guess you alluded to the fact that we have the Valley Planning Commission and a lot of local, the Department of the state is on our side on this. We, as a council, just need to provide the initial funding, and this bonding and borrowing authorization allows for that. So as he said, I think as soon as we say yes tonight, they're going to design it immediately and get the ball rolling. In infrastructure, I think you mentioned it, it's water, sewer, anything that needs to be done in this area, correct, Joe? Anything, water, sewer lines, anything that has to be repaired?
Yes, if there's additional work right now, this design is going to cover the construction of the road and drainage. Throughout the spring and summer, we will be looking at the water and sewer, and if we feel the water and sewer needs to be upgraded, we will be including that in the plan. That will be funded out of the retained earnings from water and sewer, but it will be done by the same contractor.
Yes.
Going through the state, so that the same contractors doing our work and their work and saving
makes
us
it a
some
lot
money
cheaper.
that way. Right.
More economical.
Councilor Wynn?
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, is if we're gonna do the above, we need to do the infrastructure so that we're not tearing the above apart and for leaky water mains or anything else like that. So, yeah, I'm really glad to hear that it's gonna include the infrastructure underneath.
We're gonna be running TV cameras through the sewer lines to make sure that, if the sewer lines need to be replaced, okay, then we've gotta make sure that happens. The last thing we wanna do is put together a nice road and then
Right.
have something should have been replaced underneath it that you're gonna have to come back and get.
Good.
The other thing too is the fact that this is Route 141 and is on the National Highway system. That pushes the ranking up too.
Oh, good.
Everything, like I said, there's so many things here that push our ranking up on this because of pedestrians, bicycles, the fact that it's on the National Highway system. It's just, like I said, everybody that looks at this project is just very excited about it.
Good. I love it.
Okay, any additional questions for the chief? That's good.
You're a chief now.
I can be a
Exactly.
chief. I can be a chief.
Chief
Department head.
DPW.
No? Okay. Anyone from the public, I think we're all set, Joe. Anyone from the public who'd like to address the council considering this appropriation? Okay, Councilor Rist.
Okay, therefore, I'll make a motion on a borrowing and bonding request that was sent to us on December 29th. It is hereby moved and ordered that the city appropriate the amount of $450,000 to pay costs of the complete street design of Union Street between Cottage Street and Main Street, including but not limited to the costs of engineering and design, constructing sidewalks, curb cuts, bike paths, landscaping, and the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto. And that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7-1, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore.
Second.
Okay, a motion is second to approve the bonding authorization of the $450,000. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is an interdepartmental transfer. This is straightforward. The chief couldn't be here this evening, but this is straight sick leave buyback that is necessary when members are retiring. It is part of the contract, and we basically have no choice because it's a contracted arrangement. You can see by his memo that he's requesting the $45,056 because there will be 2 members retiring in early 2017. The current collective bargaining agreement calls for the city to buy back 50% of unused sick time. The amount requested is required to meet the city's obligation in the current collective bargaining agreement. The Finance Committee approved this 2-0 at its meeting. Chief's not here, I don't know if you need the mayor.
Mayor, would you like to speak to this, or I guess I should start. Anyone here have questions for the mayor concerning this appropriation? Okay, remember that. Anyone from the public who would like to address the council concerning this appropriation? Okay, entertain a motion, Councilor List.
I therefore move that an interdepartmental transfer, the amount requested of $45,056, to be transferred from the reserve fund of $45,056, to be transferred to fire sick leave buyback account, $45,056. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to provide funds for 2 retirees' sick leave buyback.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the interdepartmental transfer of $45,056. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. And I believe the continuation goes to Councilor Carey concerning the Pleasant Street.
Thank you. So you remember from a couple weeks ago, we were dealing with the issue of the current parking situation on Pleasant Street. It was great to hear from the DPW director about how tough it is to do a full, complete streets restructuring. That's not what we're doing. We just got a lot of people telling us there's people parking willy-nilly all over Pleasant Street. And so we went out to check out what was currently happening and see if there was any improvements we could make. And so you have the suggestions before you. The only change that needed to take place from the one that you got for the last meeting was in section 124, the word west is changed to east. And so to reiterate from last meeting, Pleasant Street, the northerly side of the street is opposite the mills. That would make southerly the side that the mills are on. Easternly is going away from the rotary, westerly is going towards the rotary. So basically with the DPW director, the police chief, another police officer, some of the mill owners, some of the residents, the public safety committee, we walked the street, and what these suggestions are hoping to do is clear out some of the parking that's taking place on the northerly side and add parking on the southerly side. And as you can see, there weren't a lot of places to add parking. A lot of the changes are taking out some of the 15-minute parking, some of the hour parking, and then so that what that change does, where it goes down from Northampton Street to Pleasant Green East. Now we're talking about no parking from the rotary till going towards the Legion, no parking on your left side until after you go past the park. And that was very important to the 2 police officers with us and to everyone in the group, because there's a loading dock on the southerly side across from the park, and the park's a huge attraction for the children in town. And so we're looking at streamlining the parking on the southerly side, taking away some 15-minute parking spots where we'll allow people to spend some more time in the mills. I think that about covers it. There's still some handicap spots down by the Legion that are untouched. There's some no parking spots already across from the Legion where that retaining wall is. On the southerly side along the mills where there's a bus stop, those are going unchanged. Councilor Winnie?
Yeah, the little convenience store on the other side, are they still gonna have their
Both
parking,
convenience
or-
stores have off-street parking, and we've
Oh.
reached out to both owners a number of times and didn't really hear back one way or the other. We told them, here's what we're thinking, what do you think? And didn't get any
So that's
response.
gonna eliminate parking in front of both of them, or no?
No. So Pleasant Street Variety, across from
Yep.
the former Notre Dame Church,
Yep,
there were a couple 15-minute spots. Those will become longer spots. They'll
Oh,
just
okay.
become spots.
all right,
You can stay for 15 minutes if you want. You can stay for
Mhm.
16, not worry about it. Jerry's down
Yep.
the road has 2 or 3 spots of their own that I think they have already marked 15-minute parking, but either way, they're not public spots. They're their own little parking lot. And so that'll go unchanged. There is a public 15-minute parking spot right next to those spots, which this would remove, which no one in the group thought was a legal spot anyway.
oh,
And
okay.
a lot of that had to do with the state regs
Okay.
on how close you can park to a curb
A
cut.
curb, yep,
And a curb and a street or a walkway and entranceway.
okay.
So a lot of the big thing we're gonna see on Pleasant Street is that once it warms up, the DPW has said they'll go out and put the yellow lines along those curb cuts and the hydrants and the crosswalks and letting people know where they can't be. Because a lot of the issue right now is people are so close to a driveway or to another street and they're having trouble pulling out or pulling out into traffic too hard. And so that'll be the first thing you actually see, but it'll be updated in the books
Okay.
if it's approved.
Okay. And
And a question. Counselor. Yeah, I was under the impression that there were just gonna be 4 parking spaces across from, like, where 180 Pleasant Street is, between Berkeley and Arlington. That was my recollection on this. And now, it seems like there's gonna be parking all the way from Pleasant Green East to Arlington, is that correct?
Yeah, so from the park to the retaining wall,
From the park. Yep.
on the northerly side, there are already some spots drawn out. And there was discussion about, so from those spots to the park, is there parking or not? And the group decided that the street was wide enough at that point for parking on both sides, but then once you get to the park and as you get closer down towards Eastworks, the road really narrows a lot.
If I
don't know if that
may.
answers your
So
question.
another piece of that, so the road actually is wide enough at the park to accommodate both side parking. But I think the consensus was that with the traffic and children at the park and potentially maybe running across the road, that it didn't make sense for that.
Yeah.
But from, let me see, what is it, Pleasant Green to the retaining wall, there already are a couple marked spaces, and the road is wide enough to accommodate 1 or 2 more spaces. It would just be, but the caveat to that is it's only 1 or 2 between those streets because of the 20-foot curb cut on each side. But it does allow for a little extra parking, and it's not the same danger of having children running across the street. So that was the rationale of the group that was there, measuring.
Yeah, we weren't trying to take away too many spots, and right now, if you park from street to street right there, you might fit 1 more than you should if you have those 20, 25-foot buffers from each curb. So,
I just want to point one other thing about the park is that there are a number of parking spaces on the side of the park rather than on that main road. And there's usually several of them open throughout the day. So most people who are driving to that park by car would be likely to pull into the side there because just from a small kid's safety perspective, they're not crossing any road if they're right there. So as we're talking about safety in the park, I just wanted to make sure that that's
yeah, we didn't
part
want
of
to
it.
take away too many spots, but the
Yeah.
public safety was the #1 concern, especially with the police department around the park.
Was there any discussion about crosswalks?
There was.
Okay.
We asked Director Przinsky to put in about 100 new crosswalks.
Yeah, I'm sure that went over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, so you were there. Yeah, it's a very expensive process, you can't just throw that paint down. You have to put the new curb cuts in and restructure the sidewalk and do all that kind of stuff. So that we decided was something that should be continued to be looked at and, not something that rewriting the ordinances right now would allow us to add any crosswalks today.
Okay, because I know that Pleasant Street just had major renovations, road and sidewalks and such, but I was just thinking with Mill 180 and then across the street is the park. So I don't know if there's a crosswalk down there. I guess I never really paid attention to that.
The closest one's a little east of there,
Okay,
down towards
Right.
towards the Eastworks building,
right.
more than
Okay.
directly to 180.
Yeah,
All right,
But that's why also we wanted the parking on the southerly side, because then
Well,
there's
there
a lot
is-
of discussion about people going to the mills if you can park right outside them.
Right.
And there is a crosswalk between the 180 building and the Legion.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
There
yes,
is.
I,
Yep.
that one I do know about, okay.
Where is that?
It's right before you would turn into the curb cut for the Legion. It's direct. Sometimes, and the reason I know this is because sometimes a big 18-wheeler parks on it. And I mean, it probably needs repainted, but I know for a fact there is a crosswalk there. So if
I just have a comment about that. If you're coming out of the 180 building and you're parked right across the street over there, just like if you were on Union Street and you're parked right across the street, and there isn't a crosswalk anywhere on Union Street, the likelihood is you're not gonna go down.
No, you're gonna jaywalk.
You're gonna go right across. And the problem I see here is that we have parking now in front of the mills. And you'll have parking on the other side of the street. And cars are going pretty fast, and there's a lot of them. I was out there just before the meeting to take a look at this. I really think we do need a crosswalk in that location for safety purposes. Just for your consideration, I really think it's important.
I would say,
And I
mean,
know it costs money.
so this-
I
this-
recognize
yeah,
that.
this was definitely on the forefront of our discussion when we were out there, because there was, but I think that looking at it now is not representative of what it's going to be once we approve this, for the very reason, when those markings get put in, they are going to follow the state guidelines for parking in relation to curb cuts. So from 20 feet from each of those curb cuts is going to be a no parking zone. So if you are coming out, you're going to be looking and you're going to have a 20-foot buffer on either side.
Yeah.
If you were to jaywalk, which I don't suggest you do, I would say walk the 15 feet down to the crosswalk and cross in the crosswalk. And I think one of those spaces there is a space that goes abuts right up to the crosswalk. I believe that is a 20-foot buffer as well. So that would actually be even a more appropriate crosswalk than it is now. Right now, it's the Wild West. So what you see is not representative, I think, of what is going to be in place.
Did I hear you say there's gonna be a crosswalk within 15 feet of?
I don't know the exact footage, but I know that when you come out of the 180 curb cut, there's maybe 4 parking spaces to the crosswalk,
That's not bad.
The existing crosswalk.
the existing crosswalk.
4 spaces, if it's 4 spaces, then
I-
probably, that's
that's
probably.
approximate.
Yeah,
About
80 feet or so, that's not so bad, if
No.
there is one.
So, I mean, we can.
That's, Mr. Kupczynski, maybe you can have a better memory for this than we do.
Your question, I'm sorry.
Where's the
the
crosswalk?
crosswalk.
Where's the
to-
crosswalk?
From like around 180 across to the,
I don't know exactly where the crosswalk is, but I do know this. If you put a crosswalk in, it can't go into a driveway, and on the other side of the street, you have long driveways that were truck,
right.
places where trucks could back in. So you can't have a crosswalk going into a driveway. You're gonna have to cut somebody's driveway, if that's what you wanna do, and turn it into a area where somebody can actually stand and be in a designated area to cross. So
It's another day discussion.
that's another day discussion.
Yeah.
Across the street, I believe we're only talking four parking spaces.
That's what, yeah.
So, I hate to say it like this, but I think we're making a bigger issue of it than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Councilor Winnie?
I just want to make the comment that I'm really glad that you took into consideration no parking in front of that park. It's like one of these things, you get a little toddler or something that just happens to bolt and between 2 cars going out into Pleasant Street, and that's like me living on Hoyoke Street. I'm in fear of my life with my grandchildren when they were small, just, bolting out into Hoyoke Street. That's it. That'll be it. That'll be the end of their life. So that was a really good decision on your part and with the police.
Any questions for the director before?
Taking that out.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions, discussion here? Take it, I'll entertain a motion, Councilor Carey.
I move to amend Appendix A, the Traffic Rules and Orders, Section 1-24, 1-25, and 1-26, as shown on the document presented to councilors for this meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second to accept the changes to Appendix A, traffic rules and orders regarding Pleasant Street. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Motion passes. Okay, entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstain, motion passes. I think we've covered property, we move, no report for rules and relations, no business taken care of, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes. See you February 15th.
We have to sign the documents